The trial was supposed to be routine and open and shut case against a decorated Navy SEAL who had allegedly gone rogue. But nothing about Lieutenant Commander Asha Monroe was ever routine. In a cold courtroom packed with press and doubt, she sat handcuffed like a criminal until the heavy doors opened and a 4-star admiral walked in unannounced. What followed shattered protocol, stunned the nation, and rewrote the definition of honor. The courtroom buzzed with murmurs and thinly veiled tension. Reporters lined the back row. Pens poised, cameras ready. In the defendant's chair sat Lieutenant Commander Asha Monroe, hands cuffed, head held high, expression unreadable. She wore a navy blue suit, not her uniform, and the way the bailiff had snapped the cuffs around her wrists felt more symbolic than necessary. She was a Navy SEAL sniper, one of the most decorated in U.S. military history. A black woman in a space where few even imagined someone like her could thrive. And now she stood accused of gross insubordination, unauthorized use of force, and endangering international relations. The prosecutor's voice echoed through the chamber. Lieutenant Commander Monroe defied a direct order not to engage during Operation Ice Veil. The consequences of her actions nearly triggered a diplomatic crisis. Her conduct was reckless and unbecoming of an officer. Asha's attorney, a tired-looking man in his 50s, barely said a word. He seemed more worried about his own career than hers. From the back of the room, someone stood. The reporters didn't notice at first. A few whispers started, then a sharp gasp from a Navy JAG officer seated near the exit. A man in full dress whites had entered. But not just any officer. Admiral Marcus Keating, the youngest 4-star admiral in modern Navy history. Decorated combat, veteran, strategist, and notoriously private. The judge's gavel slammed. "This is a closed court." "Admiral, I'm aware," Keating said calmly, walking forward, his presence cutting through the room like a blade. "But I'm invoking Directive 7 Delta. I am here to submit classified testimony on behalf of Lieutenant Commander Monroe." The courtroom froze. The prosecutor opened her mouth, closed it, then whispered to her aide. Even the judge looked rattled. Directive 7 Delta was nearly myth. It allowed high-ranking officers to submit off-record evidence in cases where national security and covert operations intersected, usually in black ops circles, rarely seen in public proceedings. "I'll need to clear the room," the judge muttered, clearly shaken. "No," Admiral Keating said. "She stays." He pointed at Asha. "And the cuffs come off immediately." The bailiff hesitated. "Sir, that's a direct order," Keating barked, his voice carrying the weight of 1,000 storms. The room held its breath as the bailiff uncuffed Asha. Her wrists were red, but her eyes were steel. She didn't flinch. Keating walked to her, placed a hand on her shoulder. "You saved more lives in 30 minutes than this courtroom could comprehend in 30 years. The judge cleared his throat, regaining composure. "Admiral, if you would explain, you want to know why she fired, why she disobeyed a direct order." Keating paused, pulling a sealed folder from his coat. "Because the intelligence was wrong. The target was a trap. Her decision prevented a bioweapon from being smuggled out of Greenland and into Western Europe. We verified it 72 hours later." The prosecutor paled. "Without her actions," Keating continued, "half of Oslo would have been dead by now." "Dead." Silence. Keating turned to the gallery. "And let me be very clear. Not only did she act appropriately, she acted heroically." The judge leaned back, visibly shaken. I assume this changes the recommendation." Keating didn't smile. He just stared. "It changes everything." The court adjourned without a verdict. Asha was escorted out not by guards, but by fellow SEALs who stood at attention as she passed. Outside the courthouse, a crowd had gathered. News had leaked. She stepped into the sunlight to the sound of spontaneous applause. Later that day, the Pentagon released a statement. Charges were dropped. Asha Monroe was reinstated, and within months she was promoted again. But those who were in the courtroom that day would never forget the moment the door opened. The admiral entered, and time itself seemed to stop. Because in a world too quick to judge and too slow to listen, justice didn't just walk in, it stood tall, saluted, and said, "She's not the villain. She's the reason we're still breathing." The applause outside the courthouse didn't last long, but the moment etched itself into history. Cameras captured Asha Monroe walking down the courthouse steps, flanked by elite Navy officers in uniform, not as a prisoner, but as a hero. But even as the charges were dropped and her name cleared in the eyes of the law, whispers in high places remained. Back at Joint Special Operations Command, behind glass walls and encrypted doors, Asha sat in front of a review board. Not a trial, this was something more discreet, more dangerous. The admiral who had once frozen an entire courtroom with his presence sat beside her, still dressed in white, unreadable as ever. "You disobeyed direct orders," said a man in a gray suit. "Civilian intelligence, not military. Even if your actions prevented a catastrophe, the precedent, don't speak to me about precedent." Asha cut in, her voice cold and razor-sharp. "We train to make decisions under pressure. I made one. I stand by it." The board members exchanged glances. She wasn't supposed to talk. She was supposed to sit quietly, nod, maybe show regret. But Asha Monroe had never done what she was supposed to. The gray suit leaned back. "We've reviewed the satellite footage, your team's body cams, intercepted calls from the site. There's no denying it. You saved the lives of your entire squad and stopped the bioagent from falling into foreign hands. But you also exposed a leak," another board member said, a female Air Force colonel. "How did you know the mission was compromised?" Asha's eyes locked on hers. "Because I was listening. Someone on our encrypted channel said the exact wrong phrase. Target secured before arrival. That's not language a friendly would use. That's how we spotted insider comms during Operation Steel Fog 2 years ago. Only someone who's been in the field would have recognized it." The colonel paused, nodded, just slightly. "That's when I knew we'd been set up," Asha continued. "So I did what SEALs are trained to do when command intel is compromised. I relied on my eyes, my ears, and my team." Keating leaned forward, and she was right. "The leak is still under investigation, but it didn't come from the bottom. It came from way, way higher." The gray suit shifted uncomfortably. "Do you have proof?" Keating pulled a flash drive from his pocket and placed it on the table. "Everything's on there. Surveillance, logs, flight manifests, text decrypts. You'll see who really wanted this mission to fail." There was a long silence. Then, without a word, the board leader reached forward, took the flash drive, and signaled the end of the session. Asha and Keating walked out in silence, the steel door hissing shut behind them. Outside, on the tarmac, the admiral finally spoke. "They're not ready for someone like you, you know." "I know," Asha said, "but I'm not here to make them comfortable." He smiled faintly, pride and weariness in his eyes. "Then don't. Just be ready. You're a sniper. You're used to seeing the whole field before anyone else. That's your gift and your curse." She glanced toward the nearby helipad, where a Black Hawk sat waiting. "Where to next?" she asked. Keating's smile disappeared. "There's a summit in Geneva next week. High-level diplomats. Somebody already tried to breach the security detail. Intel says the same people behind the last op might try something bigger." Asha nodded. "Then I'm going." He hesitated. "You sure? This isn't a mission. It's politics. There are knives in the room and they're invisible." She looked him dead in the eye. "I've faced worse. In fact, I was handcuffed in a courtroom last week by people who claimed to be on my side." Keating gave a small laugh. "Fair enough." As the rotor blades began to spin, Asha turned to look back at the military compound. She thought of the judge, the prosecutor, the disbelief in their eyes when truth shattered assumption. She boarded the chopper and didn't look back, because Lieutenant Commander Asha Monroe was no longer just a sniper. She was becoming something else entirely, proof that the system couldn't bury the truth forever. And whether the world was ready for her or not, she was already aiming straight at its blind spots. The Geneva air was cold and sharp, like truth cutting through bureaucracy. Asha stepped off the Black Hawk onto a rooftop helipad above the U.S. diplomatic complex. Her presence wasn't officially listed. No public records, no manifest. Just a call sign, RAVEN 7. Waiting for her was Commander Elena Park, CIA liaison, counter-intel specialist, and someone Asha had crossed paths with before. "You're early," Park said, not bothering with a greeting. I don't like walking into traps late, Asha replied. They moved inside quickly. No salutes, no smiles. Geneva was a powder keg. The summit had gathered defense ministers, foreign intelligence directors, and even the Secretary General of the United Nations. Any breach wouldn't just be embarrassing, it could start a war. As they entered the operations room, Park pulled up a secure map. 2 days ago, we intercepted comms from a sleeper cell embedded inside the Russian consulate. Same voices from Operation Ice Veil. Ash's jaw tightened. So they're still hunting the bioagent. We think there's a second strain, genetically targeted, prototype. Someone wants to release it here and make it look like an accident. Blame it on a rogue nation. Trigger global panic. Shift alliances overnight. Asha narrowed her eyes. That would be World War III. Exactly. She took a breath. And they almost silenced me before I could talk. Park nodded. Your court-martial was more than punishment. It was a cover-up. Someone high up is cleaning the board, and you, Admiral Keating. Your entire SEAL team, you're all pieces that don't fit their game. Asha leaned over the table, eyes scanning camera grids and satellite feeds. Who's running point on security? UN peacekeepers, plus a private firm, Kestrel Global. Asha's eyes froze. Kestrel? Why? They were in Greenland too. I spotted one of their operators during Ice Veil. He wasn't supposed to be there. Park went quiet. You've got a mole inside the detail, Asha said. Before Park could answer, the lights flickered, then dimmed. Emergency backup kicked in. A loud alarm sounded in the hallway, not a drill, a breach. Asha moved first, downstairs. Chaos bloomed like wildfire. 2 guards down at the east corridor, bullet casings on the floor. A flash grenade had gone off, enough to distract, not kill. Classic infiltration tactic. Asha grabbed a suppressed cig from a fallen guard and moved through the corridor like smoke. She turned a corner, and there he was, the ghost, the man she'd nearly shot in Greenland. Gray eyes, scar down the left cheek. Kestrel operator turned mercenary. He was wheeling a small silver canister into a vent system. Asha didn't hesitate. Drop it, she barked. He froze, smiled. You again, the dead girl with 9 lives. You missed the memo. She said, I'm still breathing. His eyes flicked to his sidearm. She fired first through his shoulder. He screamed, stumbled, but still reached for the canister. Asha launched herself forward, knocking him back. They fought hand to hand. He was bigger, stronger, but she was faster, more precise. 2 quick strikes to the throat, 1 to the knee. He dropped. She yanked the canister free, sealed. Still intact. Behind her, Park and 2 agents arrived, weapons drawn. Secure him, Asha said, breathing hard. Tell the summit to lock down the air vents. He almost turned Geneva into a test site. By morning, the news broke globally. A potential bioterror attack thwarted at the Geneva summit. No names were released. No agencies claimed credit. But within Pentagon walls, the message was clear. Asha Monroe had just exposed one of the most well-funded covert sabotage operations in modern history. She didn't just stop an attack. She stopped a war. 3 days later, Asha stood in the Oval Office. Not a courtroom, not a battlefield. She wore her uniform, this time clean, pressed, her ribbons shining in the sunlight filtering through tall windows. The president handed her a small black box. Lieutenant Commander Monroe, for actions far beyond the call of duty, with courage, discretion, and resolve, we present you with the Presidential Medal of Valor. Applause echoed gently through the room, but Asha barely smiled, because she knew something few others did. The war wasn't over. It had just changed shape, and they hadn't seen the last of her. The medal felt heavy in Asha Monroe's hand, but not heavier than the silence that followed. The applause in the Oval Office faded quickly, replaced by forced smiles and side eyes among the gathered officials. Some of them clapped because they meant it, others because they were afraid not to. The president leaned in quietly. You embarrassed a lot of people, Commander. Asha met his eyes, only the ones who needed embarrassing. He gave a faint, reluctant nod. We'll talk again soon. She turned and walked out, flanked not by honor guards, but by a quiet figure in civilian clothes, Admiral Keating, dressed down now, sunglasses in hand. No cameras followed them, No press asked questions. They stepped into a black SUV and shut the doors. You were right, Keating said once they were moving. The ghost wasn't working alone. We intercepted a call encrypted, routed through for countries. Same voice you picked up on that scrambled comms line in Greenland. Asha looked out the window. How deep does it go? He hesitated. Deeper than we thought. Defense contractors, mid-level State Department officials, maybe even someone inside the National Security Council. They're calling it the Phoenix Protocol. Ash's jaw clenched. What is it? A long game. A controlled collapse. Carefully managed chaos, fed by proxy attacks and false flags. Push the world to the brink. Then offer salvation in the form of a new military alliance privately run, publicly supported. She turned toward him, her voice low. They want to replace nations with corporations, exactly. And the Geneva attack was just the test run. Keating nodded. You shut it down. But now they know you're a threat. Asha leaned back in the seat, thinking, you don't want out? Keating asked. She gave a quiet laugh. I was never in it for medals or headlines. I didn't get this far surviving snipers, sharks, and sabotage just to go home and plant tomatoes. He raised an eyebrow. So what's your move? Asha looked at him, then said something she'd been holding back since the courthouse. I want my own team, off books, ghost clearance. I don't want red tape, I want targets. Keating didn't blink. You'd be hunted. I already am. He gave the faintest smile. All right then. But choose carefully. Once this starts, you don't get to disappear. You become a shadow that every other shadow fears. Asha stared ahead as the SUV turned onto a private road leading toward an unmarked airstrip. I'm not afraid, she said. He nodded slowly. Good. Because the Phoenix Protocol has operatives in Berlin, Jakarta, Lagos, and DC. We've been watching them, but we need someone to move. Someone who doesn't need permission. She turned to him, eyes sharp. I don't need permission. I need a target list. Keating handed her a sealed envelope. Then consider this your first mission. Asha tore the seal. Inside, for names, a flight itinerary, a photo of a high-rise in Berlin, and a handwritten line, trust no one. Not even inside your own chain of command. As the jet's engines roared to life, Asha stepped onto the tarmac and disappeared into the shadows. From this point forward, she wasn't just a SEAL sniper. She was a ghost, a reckoning. And for those who had tried to rewrite the rules of power in the dark, she was the one rule they forgot. Never come for the quiet soldier who sees everything. Because when she comes back, it's already too late. The jet lifted into the night sky like a whisper, leaving behind the safety of American soil and soaring straight into the heart of a conspiracy that had spent years hiding behind flags, contracts, and deniable operations. Asha sat in the back, reviewing the files from the envelope under red cabin lights. For names. Each one carried weight. Each one had ties to defense conglomerates and covert influence networks, but none of them had direct blood on their hands. That was the brilliance and the horror of the Phoenix Protocol. It was designed to operate like a virus, invisible, decentralized, lethal. The first name, Lena Drexler, CEO of Solventus Technologies, a Berlin-based cybersecurity firm rumored to sell backdoors to intelligence agencies on both sides of the Atlantic. The second, General Thomas Rourke, retired U.S. Army, now a consultant for Kestrel Global. He had signed off on the contract for Geneva's private security. He also happened to be Keating's former commanding officer. The third, Sebastian Rice, a so-called philanthropist in Lagos who was funneling weapons into West African coastal zones under the guise of stability. Operations. The fourth, blank. No photo, no details, just a codename. Ember. Asha stared at the word. It didn't feel like a person. It felt like a warning. Suddenly, her calm's earpiece crackled to life. Monroe, we have a problem. It was Park, CIA, static. In the line meant she was somewhere remote and on the move. Talk. Berlin might be compromised already. Drexler's office was torched an hour ago. Gas leak, they said. But our intel shows a squad of unmarked assets leaving the scene. Before the fire started, Drexler dead, no confirmation. But they wanted her gone. If they're cleaning house, we're late to the game. Where's the source of the intel? From someone embedded inside Kestrel, Park said, voice low. She wants to meet face to face. Says Drexler's death wasn't just about silencing. She was trying to defect. Claims she found the identity of Ember. Asha sat forward. Where? Kreuzberg. Old signal tower. Midnight. Backup. She doesn't trust anyone but you. Asha didn't hesitate. Send the coordinates. The jet touched down on a cold Berlin runway under cover of a diplomatic seal. Asha changed into civilian gear black. Combat hoodie, secure phone, weapons concealed in plain sight. She moved like smoke through the city, blending with the fog rolling off the river Spree. The tower was dark, graffiti tagged, long abandoned. A perfect meeting place for ghosts. Asha entered silently. The woman was already there, mid-30s, pale, sharp. She had a scar under one eye and held her side like she'd recently been in a fight. You're Monroe? The woman asked, voice hoarse. I am. You're the Kestrel asset. The woman nodded. Used to be. Not anymore. They found out I was leaking intel. I have minutes, not hours. Asha motioned for her to sit. Tell me what you know. She handed Asha a small drive. Drexler found out about a secondary command network, a digital kill switch tied to Phoenix. All assets, all funding, all orders trace back to one controller, Ember. Asha clenched her jaw, and the woman coughed, blood on her glove. She was going to go public, not just hand off files, testify. She had a line to a NATO intelligence tribunal. They didn't just kill her, they disappeared her. You mean she's not confirmed dead? No. Body, no trace. Just a fire and a message, stay quiet or burn. Asha reached for the drive, but in that moment, the woman's eyes widened too late. Crack. A single suppressed shot from the shadows. The woman slumped. Asha hit the ground, rolled behind a rusted panel, drew her sidearm. One gunman, no, two. Tight formation. High ground advantage. She fired 3 times to hits. One down. The other fled. Asha moved to the woman still breathing. Barely. She pressed the drive into Ash's hand. Gasping, Ember isn't who you think. She's another shot. But this one came from outside. Not at Asha but past her. Someone else was. Firing at the attackers. Asha looked up to the tower window. A silhouette. The last assailant dropped. Then the silhouette disappeared. Asha ran up the stairs 2 at a time. Heart pounding. When she reached the top, nothing. No trace. No shooter. Just a small card on the floor, left in plain sight. She picked it up. Black background. White lettering. It read, "You're not the only ghost." Back in her safe house that night, Asha decrypted the drive. Her blood ran cold. Video files, voicemails, satellite pings, and a dossier that named Ember. She stared at the image as it loaded. It wasn't who she expected. Not a general. Not a warlord. Not even a corporate executive. It was a face she knew. Someone who had stood beside her. Someone who had defended her in court. Someone she had trusted with her life. Admiral Marcus Keating. Ember was him, and just like that, everything changed. The man who saved her was the one playing both sides. She wasn't hunting shadows anymore. She was standing inside them. And this time, the war wasn't across oceans. It was personal. It was home. And it had already begun. There it was. Proof. Admiral Marcus Keating, mentor, protector. The man who'd walked into a courtroom and frozen the world was Ember. The architect of the Phoenix Protocol. The puppeteer behind it all. Not just a double agent. The mastermind. He hadn't rescued her. He'd calculated her. Used her fall to build her legend. Used her redemption to gain her trust. And now she was a loaded weapon aimed at his enemies without ever knowing who was pulling the trigger. Until now, Asha stood up slowly, rage boiling into something colder, sharper. Not fury, not grief. Just clarity. She moved across the safe house, pulling open a metal case. Inside, a clean sniper rifle. Customized, scoped, balanced, silent. She began assembling it piece by piece. No more middlemen. No more tiptoeing through corrupt tribunals or shadow negotiations. This was no longer about clearing her name. It was about something far deeper. Betrayal. Keating had made a critical error. He'd trained her too well, taught her how to think 3 moves ahead, how to vanish, how to strike where no one looked. He had sculpted a ghost, and now he was being hunted by the very thing he thought he controlled. Her phone buzzed. A single message, untraceable. You've seen the truth. What will you do with it? She didn't reply. She didn't need to. Asha zipped the case shut, slung it over her shoulder, and stepped out into the Berlin night, not as a soldier, not as a symbol, but as reckoning. She would hunt him across continents, through embassies, under oceans, behind the walls of think tanks and war rooms. Because Keating hadn't just built a monster, he'd built a mirror, and now he was going to see himself clearly. For the last time, they thought the story ended in a courtroom. They thought the applause was the last sound. They thought she'd go quietly back into the ranks. But legends don't fade. Ghosts don't sleep. And Asha Monroe, she's not finished. She's just getting started. Watch the shadows. She's in them now. And no one leaves her sights.